Let's all take a collective breath. Good evening and welcome. Tonight, we owe a debt of gratitude to the family who makes this possible. It's the Graziadio family. They are the visionaries. Thank you. Yes. Here's Steve Cavillo representing the Graziadio family right now. They are the visionary pioneers who have shown Torrance Memorial and the South Bay community the way toward what we now refer to as lifestyle medicine and or integrative medicine. Through their sponsorship, their family is committed to the idea that true health care begins with wellness. To that end, they make evenings like this possible, as well as countless other educational and support groups through a generous grant from the Graziadio Wellness Center. So please join me in thanking the Graziadios for their commitment to Torrance Memorial and to our local community. As a result of the Graziadio-sponsored lectures and documentary screenings in 2015, we started an in-person monthly group called Torrance Memorial's Eat Clean and Green, a plant-based lifestyle group. I believe there are flyers about that outside on the back table. Our next meeting is this coming Monday at 6:30 in the evening. It's in the West Tower Auditorium, which is the building across the street. If you get excited about what you hear tonight and want to get started and want to know how to get started, maybe, this group is for you. So now for the main attraction, I am completely honored and thrilled to be introducing you to our guest speaker tonight, Dr. Michael Greger. I can't explain like what a big deal it is to have him here tonight. No, not yet. I'm going to try to keep talking as long as I can so you can finish these books. Okay, so it is such a big deal to have him. When I picked him up from the airport, we rushed to Calabasas for him to do a podcast interview with Rich Roll, which is a podcast that I highly recommend. It's going to be fascinating. It was so amazing. They sit down and go. There's no editing. It is just right off the cuff conversation, and it is really like amazing the amount of information that's in this man's head. And then on the drive back from Calabasas, he had an interview from a radio station in New Zealand. So, and he was answering emails and text messages, and basically busy the whole way. He flew in this morning from Philadelphia and is catching a 6 a.m. flight out tomorrow morning. So, and he's on East Coast time, so we really need to understand why once we wrap this lecture, he's going to do a quick Q&A and then he'll be heading out. So I hope you guys can please honor and respect that from him. So I want to tell you a little bit more about him for those of you who may not know. He's a founding member and fellow of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. He's a physician. Dr. Michael Greger's a physician, a New York Times best-selling author, and an internationally recognized speaker on nutrition. He has videos on more than 2,000 health topics freely available at nutritionfacts.org, with new videos and articles uploaded almost every day. Dr. Greger has lectured at the Conference on World Affairs, tested before Congress and was invited as an expert witness in the defense of Oprah Winfrey in the infamous meat defamation trial. He is a graduate of Cornell University School of Agriculture and Tufts University School of Medicine. His latest books, How Not to Die, which has been translated in 33 different languages, How Not to Die cookbook, and now the How Not to Diet, all became instant New York Times bestsellers. All proceeds he receives from the sale of his books go to charity. So, how not to diet? Who among you would like to know the final and ultimate answer, how not to diet? Like, I want to know how not to diet. It's something that we all want to get some clarity on. There's a lot of confusing information in the media, and he makes his reports and everything that he talks about is all empirically based because he does a deep dive into the literature. Oh, okay, good. Okay, so here's a question, because he does everything based on research, right? Will he deliver on answering this elusive question? We won't know until we put him to the test. So without further ado, please give me a warm welcome for Dr. Michael Greger.
Welcome, everyone. How's that sound, the cheap seats in the back? Good? All right. Here, hold on. All right. Surely, if there were some safe, simple, side effect-free solution to the obesity epidemic, we'd know about it by now, right? I'm not so sure. It may take an average of 17 years for research findings make it. Ooh, are we going to be able to? Yeah, there we go. All right. Before research findings make it into day-to-day clinical practice. To take one example that was particularly poignant for my family, heart disease. Decades ago, Dr. Dean Ornish and colleagues published evidence in one of the most prestigious medical journals in the world that our leading cause of death could be reversed with diet and lifestyle changes alone, yet hardly anything happened. Even now, hundreds of thousands of Americans continue to needlessly die each year from what we learned decades ago was a reversible condition. I had seen it with my own eyes. My grandmother was cured of her end-stage heart disease by one of Dean's contemporaries, Nathan Pritikin, using similar methods. She was given a medical death sentence at age 65, but thanks to a healthy diet, was able to enjoy another 31 years on this planet till age 96, to continue to enjoy her 6 grandkids, including me. So, if effectively the cure to our number one killer could get lost down some rabbit hole and ignored, what else might there be in the medical literature that could help my patients, but just didn't have a corporate budget driving its promotion? Well, I made it my life's mission to find out. That's why I became a doctor in the first place, and that's why I started my nonprofit site, nutritionfacts.org. Everything on the website is free. There are no ads, no corporate sponsorship, strictly non-commercial, not selling anything. Just put it up as a public service, as a labor of love, as a tribute to my grandmother. New videos and articles almost every day on the latest in evidence-based nutrition. What a concept. Okay, so what does the evidence say is the best way to lose weight? If you want testimonials and before and after pictures, you have come to the wrong place. I'm not interested in anecdotes. I'm interested in evidence. When it comes to making decisions as life and death important as to what to feed ourselves and our families, there's really only one question as far as I'm concerned. What does the best available balance of evidence say right now? The problem is that even just sticking to the peer-reviewed medical literature is not enough, as false and scientifically unsupported beliefs about obesity are pervasive even in medical journals. The only way to get at the truth, then, is to dive deep into the primary literature and read all the original studies themselves. But who's got time for that? There are more than 500,000 scientific papers on obesity, with 100 new ones published every day. But that's what we do at nutritionfacts.org. We come through tens of thousands of studies a year so you don't have to. Very nice. Very nice. Very good. And indeed, we uncovered a treasure trove of buried data, like today, for example, I'll cover simple spices proven in randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trials to accelerate weight loss for pennies a day, but with so little profit potential, it's no wonder that these studies never saw the light of day. The only profiting I care about, though, is your health. That's why 100% of all the proceeds I receive from all my books are all donated to charity. I just want to do for your family what Pritikin did for my family. But wait a second, isn't weight loss just about eating less and moving more? I mean, isn't a calorie a calorie? That's what the food industry wants you to think. Right? The notion that a calorie from one source is just as fattening as a calorie from any other is a trope broadcast by the food industry to absolve itself of culpability. Coca-Cola even put out an ad emphasizing this one simple common sense fact. As the current and past chairs of Harvard's nutrition department put it, the central argument from industry is that the overconsumption of calories from carrots would be no different than the overconsumption of calories from soda. Now, I mean, if a calorie is just a calorie, why does it matter what kind of foods we put in our mouth? Well, I mean, let's explore that example of carrots versus Coca-Cola. Now, it's true that in a tightly controlled laboratory setting, 240 calories of carrots, 10 carrots, would have the same effect on calorie balance as the 240 calories in a bottle of Coke. But the comparison falls flat on its face in the real world, right? I mean, you could chug those liquid candy calories down in less than a minute, but eating 240 calories of carrots might take you more than 2.5 hours of constant chewing. It's been timed. It's true. Not only would your jaw get sore, but 240 calories of carrots, I mean, that's like 5 cups of carrots. I mean, you might not even be able to fit them all in your stomach at the same time. I mean, our stomach is only so big. Once we filled up stretch receptors in our stomach wall, tell us when we've had enough. But different foods have different amounts of calories per stomachful. I mean, some foods just have more calories per pound, per cup, per mouthful than others. This is the concept of calorie density, the number of calories in a given amount of food. Now, as you can see, oil, for example, has a high calorie density, which means it has a high calorie concentration, lots of calories packed into a small space. So, dribbling a tablespoon of oil, for example, on a dish adds over 100 calories. I mean, for those same 100 calories, you could have instead eaten about 2 cups of blackberries, for example, a food with a low calorie density, right? So these two meals have the same number of calories. I mean, you could swig down that spoonful of oil and not even feel a difference in your stomach, but, eating a couple cups of berries could, start to fill you up, right? That's why, yes, biochemically, a calorie is a calorie, but eating the same amount of calories in different forms can have different effects. The average human stomach can expand to fit about 4 cups of food, right? So a single stomachful of strawberry ice cream, for example, could max out our caloric intake for the entire day. To get those same 2,000 calories from strawberries themselves, you'd have to eat 44 cups of berries. That's 11 stomachfuls, right? I mean, as delicious as berries are, I don't think I could, fill my stomach to bursting 11 times in a day, right? Some foods are just impossible to overeat, right? I mean, they're so low in calorie density that you couldn't physically eat enough to even maintain your weight. I mean, in a lab, a calorie is a calorie, but in life, far from it. Traditional weight loss diets focus on decreasing portion size, right? But these eat less approaches can leave people feeling, unsatisfied, hungry. A more effective approach may be to change this emphasis from restriction to positive eat more messaging of increasing healthy, low-calorie density foods, but you don't know until you put it to the test. Researchers in Hawaii tried putting people on a more traditional Hawaiian diet with all the plant foods they could eat, unlimited quantities of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, and the study subjects lost an average of 17 pounds in just 21 days. Now, calorie intake dropped 40%, but not because they were eating less food. They lost 17 pounds in 3 weeks eating more food, in excess of 4 pounds of food a day. How could that be? Because whole plant foods tend to be so calorically dilute, you can stuff yourself without getting the same kind of weight gain. They lost 17 pounds in 3 weeks eating more food. That's why in my new book, How Not to Diet, which I'm very excited about, that's why low in calorie density is on my list of the 17 ingredients of an ideal weight loss diet. Since Americans average about 3 pounds of food a day, right, if you stuck with mostly these foods, you can see how you could eat more food and still shed pounds. Vegetables have the lowest calorie density, and so researchers at Penn State decided to put them to the test. Study subjects were served pasta and told to eat as much or as little as they wanted. And on average, they consumed about 900 calories of pasta. Now, what do you think would happen if, as a first course, they gave them 100 calories of salad, composed largely of lettuce, carrots, cucumbers, celery, and cherry tomatoes? Would they go on to eat the same amount of pasta and end up with 1,000-calorie lunch, 900 plus 100? Or would they eat 100 fewer calories of pasta to kind of effectively cancel out the added salad calories? It was even better than that. They ate more than 200 fewer calories of pasta. Thanks to the salad, 100 calories in, 200 calories out. So in essence, the salad had negative 100 calories. Preloading with the vegetables can effectively subtract calories out of a meal. That's how you can lose weight, by eating more food. Of course, the type of salad matters. The researchers repeated the experiment, but they added a fatty dressing and shredded cheese on top, quadrupling the salad's calorie density. Now, eating this salad as a first course didn't turn the 900-calorie meal into one with less than 800 calories. Instead, it turned it into a meal with calories in the quadruple digits. It's like, preloading, pizza with garlic bread or something. You're just going to end up with more calories overall. So, what's the cutoff? Well, studies on preloading show that eating a cup of food before a meal decreases subsequent intake by about 100 calories. So to get a negative calorie effect, that first course would have to contain fewer than 100 calories per cup. And as you can see in the chart, that includes most fresh fruits and vegetables, but having something like a dinner roll or something just simply wouldn't work. But hey, give people a large apple to eat before that same pasta meal, and rather than consuming 200 calories less, it was more like 300 calories less. So, how many calories does an apple have? It depends on when you eat it. Before a meal, an apple can effectively have negative 200 calories. You see the same thing giving people a vegetable soup as a first course. Hundreds of calories disappear. One study that tracked people's intake throughout the day even found overweight subjects randomized to pre-lunch vegetable soup not only ate less lunch, but deducted an extra bonus 100 calories at supper too, a whole 7 hours later. Right? So the next time you sit down to some healthy soup, you can think of calories being veritably sucked out of your body with every spoonful. Even just drinking 2 cups of water before a meal caused people to eat about 20% less, taking in about 100 fewer calories. No wonder overweight men and women randomized to 2 cups of water before each meal lost weight 44% faster. Right? 2 cups of water before each meal, 44% faster weight loss, right? But who's going to profit about telling you about these amazing studies, right? No money to be made in tap water. That's why so-called negative calorie preloading is on my list of weight loss boosters, right? Which are all the things that I could find that can accelerate weight loss regardless of what you eat the rest of the time. Now, anything we can put on that first course salad to boost weight loss even further? Well, in my amping AMPK section, I talk about ways to activate an enzyme known as the fat controller. Its discovery is considered one of the most important biomedical breakthroughs in recent decades. You can activate this enzyme through exercise, fasting, or nicotine, but is there any way to boost it for weight loss without the whole sweat, hunger, or dying a horrific death from lung cancer thing? Well, Big Pharma is all over it. After all, obese individuals may be unwilling to perform even a minimum of physical activity, wrote a group of pharmacologists, thus indicating that drugs mimicking endurance exercise are highly desirable. So, it's crucial that oral compounds with high bioavailability are developed to safely induce chronic AMPK activation for long-term weight loss and maintenance. But there's no need to develop such a drug, since you can already buy it at any grocery store. It's called vinegar. When vinegar, acetic acid, is metabolized, you get a natural AMPK boost. Now, enough of a boost to actually lose weight at a typical dose you might get dressing a salad. I mean, vinegar has been used for centuries to treat obesity, but only recently has it been put to the test. A randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial on the effects of vinegar intake on the reduction of body fat in overweight men and women. The subjects were randomized to drink a daily beverage containing 1 to 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, or a placebo-control group drinking a beverage developed to taste like the vinegar group, but made with a different kind of acid. So it didn't have any actual acetic acid, any real vinegar. 3 months in, the fake vinegar group, placebo group, actually gained body fat, which is, as overweight people tend to do, whereas the genuine vinegar group significantly lost body fat, as determined by CT scan. A little vinegar a day led to pounds of weight loss achieved for just pennies a day without removing anything from their diets. That's why one of my 21 tweaks to accelerate weight loss is 2 teaspoons of vinegar with each meal, either sprinkled on your salad or just added to some tea with lemon juice or something. Now, the vinegar studies are nice because they were placebo-controlled. That's hard to do with food. I mean, you can't stuff cabbage into a capsule. But there are some foods so potent that you can actually stuff them in a pill to pit them head-to-head against placebos, and that's spices. Look, you want to know if garlic can cause weight loss? Well, fine. Give people some garlic powder pills versus placebo pills, and garlic worked, resulting in both a drop in weight and waistlines within 6 weeks. They used about a half teaspoon of garlic powder a day, which would cost less than 4 cents a day. 4 cents too steep? Well, how about 2 cents? This is a quarter teaspoon of garlic powder a day, if you choose generic, of course, right? About 100 overweight men and women were randomized to a quarter teaspoon worth of garlic powder a day or placebo, and those unknowingly taking the 2 cents worth of garlic powder a day lost about 6 pounds of straight body fat over the next 15 weeks. Now, if you can splurge up to 3 cents a day, there's black cumin. A meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials shows weight loss efficacy, again, with just a quarter teaspoon a day. So wait, what is black cumin? You obviously have not been reading your Bibles. Described as a miracle herb, besides the weight loss, there are randomized controlled trials showing daily black cumin consumption significantly improving cholesterol, and triglycerides, significantly improves blood pressure and blood sugar control. But I use it just because it tastes good, right? It's just a spice. I just put black cumin in like a pepper grinder, use it just like black pepper, right? With more than 1,000 papers published in the medical literature on black cumin, some reporting extraordinary results, like dropping cholesterol levels as much as a statin drug. Why don't we hear more about it? Why wasn't I taught about it in medical school? Presumably because there's so little profit motive, right? Black cumin is just a common natural spice. You're not going to thrill your stockholders selling something you can't patent that costs 3 cents a day. Or you can use regular cumin, acts as an appetite suppressant. Those randomized to a half teaspoon at both lunch and dinner over 3 months lost about 4 more pounds and an extra inch off their waist, found comparable to the obesity drug known as Orlistat. That's, that sounds familiar, that's the anal leakage drug you may have heard about, though the drug company apparently prefers the term fecal spotting to describe the rectal discharge it causes. But the drug company's website does offer some helpful tips. It's probably a smart idea to wear dark pants and bring a change of clothes with you to work. You know, just in case the drug causes you to crap your pants at work. I think I'll stick with the cumin. Thank you very much. Cayenne pepper can counteract the metabolic slowing that accompanies weight loss and boosts fat burning as a bonus. Ginger powder, over a dozen randomized controlled trials starting just a quarter teaspoon a day, shows significantly decreased body weight, again, for just pennies a day, proven in placebo-controlled trials to work, but you probably never heard about any of this because they just can't make enough profit. My section on fat-blocking foods starts out with a command to eat your thylakoids, doctor's orders. What on earth is a thylakoid? Well, just the source of nearly all known life and the oxygen we breathe. Thylakoids are where photosynthesis takes place, the process by which plants turn light into food. Thylakoids are the great green engine of life, microscopic sac-like structures composed of chlorophyll-rich membranes concentrated in the leaves of plants. When we eat thylakoids, meaning when we bite into a leaf of spinach, for example, those green leaf membranes don't get immediately digested, and they can last for hours in our intestines, and that's when they work their magic. Thylakoid membranes bind to lipase. Lipase is the enzyme our body uses to digest fat. So you bind the enzyme, you can slow fat absorption. Now, wait a second. If all the fat is eventually absorbed, though, what's the benefit? Location, location, location. There's a phenomenon known as the ileal break. The ileum is the last part of the small intestine before it dumps into the colon. When undigested calories are detected that far down in our small intestine, our body thinks we must be full from stem to stern and puts the brakes on eating more by dialing down our appetite. This can be shown experimentally. You stick a 9-foot tube down people's throat and drip in any calories, fat, protein, sugar, and you can activate the ileal break. Then sit them down to an all-you-can-eat meal, and compared to the placebo group that just got a little squirt of water through the tube, they eat over 100 calories less. They just don't feel as hungry. They feel just as full, eating significantly less. That's the ileal break in action. And then this can then translate into weight loss. Right? Randomize overweight women to eat a diet of green plant membranes. In other words, just covertly slip them a little powdered spinach, and they get a boost in appetite-suppressing hormones, a decreased urge for sweets. Here's the sweets. So, for example, here, urge for chocolate. Okay, so this is where are we? 2 hours, 4 hours, like 6 hours, 7 hours later, after a little spinach powder, you give people chocolate, they're like, chocolate? Pfft, chocolate, who wants chocolate? Gross. Remarkable difference, same thing with sweets. And what this translates to, because you can blunt the cravings, is accelerated weight loss. All thanks to eating green. The actual green itself, the chlorophyll-packed membranes in the leaves. Now, the researchers used spinach powder just because they wanted to give a placebo, so you couldn't tell if you were in the spinach group or not. But you can get just as many thylakoids eating about a half cup of cooked greens a day, which is what I recommend people eat at least 2 times a day in my daily dozen checklist of all the healthiest of healthy foods I encourage people to fit into their daily routine. In the Journal of the Society of Chemical Industry, a group of food technologists argue that given their fat-blocking benefits, thylakoid membranes could be incorporated into functional foods as promising new appetite-reducing ingredients, or you can just get them the way Mother Nature intended. Now, though thylakoids eventually get broken down, fiber makes it all the way down to our colon. While it's technically true we can't digest fiber that's only applicable to the part of us that's actually human, most of the cells in our body are actually bacteria. Our gut flora, which weighs as much as one of our kidneys, is metabolically active as our liver, has been called our forgotten organ, and it's an organ that runs on MAC, which stands for microbiota accessible carbohydrate. So when you see me write, eat lots of Big Macs, don't get the wrong idea. MAC is just another name for prebiotics, what our good gut flora eat. In other words, fiber. What do our good bacteria do with fiber? We feed them, and they feed us right back. They make short-chain fatty acids that get absorbed from our colon into our bloodstream, circulate through our body, get up into our brain. It's like the way our gut flora communicates with us, and dials down our appetite, all the while increasing the rate at which we burn fat and boosting our metabolism all at the same time, all thanks to fiber with little help from our little friends. Check this out. Put people in a brain scanner and show them a high-calorie food like a donut, and the reward centers of their brain instantly light up. But if you repeat the experiment, but this time secretly deliver fiber-derived short-chain fatty acids directly into their rectum, you get a blunted reward center response. Subjects report that high-calorie foods just don't seem as appealing and subsequently eat less of an all-you-can-eat meal, right? But fiber supplements like Metamucil don't work. Why? Because they're non-fermentable, meaning our gut bacteria can't eat it. They can help with bowel regularity or something, but they can't be used by our good bacteria to make these cravings-blocking compounds. For that, we have to actually eat real food. Our good gut bugs are trying to help us, but when we eat a diet deficient in fiber, we are in effect starving our microbial self. Less than 5% of Americans reach even the recommended minimum daily intake of fiber. No surprise, this is the number one source of fiber are beans and whole grains, and 96% of Americans don't even reach the minimum intake of legumes, which are beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils, and 99% don't reach the recommended minimum for whole grains. Most people don't even know what fiber is. More than half of Americans surveyed think that steak is a significant source of fiber. However, by definition, fiber is only found in plants. There's zero fiber in meat, dairy, or eggs, and typically little or no fiber in processed junk, and therein lies the problem. But wouldn't at least the protein in that steak fill you up? Surprisingly, even a review funded by the meat, dairy, and egg industries acknowledged that protein intake does not actually translate into eating less later on. Whereas you eat a whole grain, fiber-rich food for supper, you can cut your calorie intake more than 12 hours later at lunch the next day. You feel about 100 calories, you feel just as full, 100 calories quicker the following day, because by then your good gut bugs are feasting on that same bounty and dialing down your appetite. Today, even our meat could be considered junk food. For more than a century, one of the major goals of animal agriculture has been to increase the carcass fat content of farm animals. Take chicken, for example. 100 years ago, the USDA determined that chicken was about 23% protein by weight and less than 2% fat. Today, chickens have been genetically manipulated through selective breeding to have 10 times more fat. Chicken Little has become Chicken Big and may be making us bigger too. Meat consumption in general is associated with weight gain, but poultry appeared to be the worst. Even just an ounce a day, that's like a single chicken nugget, or one chicken breast every 10 days, associated with weight gain compared to eating no chicken at all. It's funny, when the meat industry funds obesity studies on chicken, they choose for their head-to-head comparison foods like cookies and sugar-coated chocolates. This is a classic drug industry trick where you compare your drug to some, to something. You make your product look better by comparing to something is worse. Apparently, just regular chocolate wasn't bad enough to make chicken look better. But what happens when chicken is pitted against a real control, like chicken without the actual chicken? Chickens out. Both tofu and corn, a plant-based meat made from the mushroom kingdom, was found to have stronger satiating qualities than chicken. Feed people a chicken and rice lunch, and 4.5 hours later, they eat 18% more calories of a dinner buffet than those who had instead gotten chicken-free chicken and rice lunch. And these findings are consistent with childhood obesity research that found that meat consumption appeared to double the odds of school children becoming overweight compared to the consumption of plant-based meat products. Now, of course, whole food sources of plant foods, such as beans, did even better, cutting in half the odds of kids becoming overweight. So that's why I consider these kinds of plant-based meats more of a useful stepping stone towards a healthier diet rather than the end game ideal. But part of the reason that these plant-based meats may be less fattening is because they cause less of an insulin spike. Meat-free chicken like corn causes up to 41% less of an immediate insulin reaction. Turns out animal protein causes almost exactly as much insulin release as pure sugar. Just adding some egg whites to your diet can increase insulin output as much as 60% within 4 days, and fish may be even worse. Why would adding tuna to mashed potatoes spike up insulin levels, but adding broccoli instead cut the insulin response by about 40%? It's not the fiber, since giving the same amount of broccoli fiber alone provide no significant benefit. So wait a second, why does the animal protein make things worse, but the plant protein make things better? Well, plant proteins tend to be lower in branched chain amino acids, which are associated with insulin resistance, the cause of type 2 diabetes. You can show this experimentally. You give some vegans branched chain amino acids, you can make them as insulin resistant as omnivores. Or take some omnivores and put them even through a 48-hour vegan diet challenge, and within 2 days, you can see a significant improvement in metabolic health. You see the opposite. Why? Because consumption of branched chain amino acids decreased consumption of branched chain amino acids improves metabolic health. Check this out. Those randomized to restrict their protein intake were averaging literally hundreds more calories a day, so they should become fatter. But no, they actually lost more body fat. Restricting their protein enabled them to eat more calories, but at the same time, they lost more weight, more calories, yet a loss in body fat. And this magic protein restriction? They were having people eat the recommended amount of protein. So it wasn't a protein restriction. They should have just called this the normal protein group or the recommended protein group, and the group that was eating more typical American protein levels and suffering because of it, the excess protein group. Given the metabolic harms of excess branched-chain amino acid exposure, leaders in the field have suggested the invention of drugs to block their absorption, to promote metabolic health and treat obesity and diabetes without reducing caloric intake, or we can just try not to eat so many branched-chain amino acids in the first place. And they are found mostly in meat, including chicken and fish, dairy products, and eggs, perhaps explaining why animal protein has been associated with higher diabetes risk, whereas plant protein appears protective. So defining the appropriate upper limits of animal protein intake may offer a great chance for the prevention of type 2 diabetes and obesity, but it need not be all or nothing. Even an intermittent vegan diet may be beneficial. If there was one piece of advice I'd like to leave everyone here with that really sums up the recommendations in my book, it would be to wall off your calories. Let me explain what that means. Animal cells are encased only in easily digestible membranes, allowing the enzymes in our gut to effortlessly liberate the calories within a steak, for example. Right? Plant cells, on the other hand, have cell walls that are made out of fiber, which acts as an indigestible physical barrier, so many of the calories remain trapped inside. Now, processed plant foods, however, like fruit juice, sugar, refined grains, even whole grains if they've been powdered into flour, have had their cellular structure destroyed, their cell walls cracked open, and their calories are free for the taking. But when we eat structurally intact plant foods, chew all you want, you're still going to end up with calories completely encapsulated by fiber, which then blunts the glycemic index, activates the ileal brake, and delivers sustenance to your friendly flora. So, bottom line, we should make sure as many of our calories as possible, our carbs, our protein, our fat, are encased in cell walls. In other words, from whole intact plant foods. That's what nature intended to happen millions of years before we learned how to sharpen spears and boil sugar cane and mill grains. Our entire physiology is presumed to have evolved in the context of what the rest of our great ape cousins eat: plants. The Paleolithic period, when we started using tools, only goes back about 2 million years. Right? We and other great apes have been evolving since back in the Miocene era, more like 20 million years ago. Right? So for the first 90% of our hominoid existence, right, our bodies evolved on mostly plants. Right? It's no wonder then why our bodies may thrive best on the diets we were designed to eat. So maybe we should go back to our roots. With enough portion control, anyone can lose weight, right? Lock someone in a closet, you can force them to lose as much body fat as you want. Chaining someone to a treadmill could have a similar effect. But what's the most effective weight loss regimen that doesn't involve calorie restriction or exercise or a felony? Well, I have scoured through the medical literature and all the randomized controlled trials, and the single most successful strategy to date is a diet of whole plant foods. The single most effective weight loss intervention like that ever published in the peer-reviewed scientific literature, a whole food plant-based diet, works better than anything else studied to date. And no wonder, given what we just learned about fiber and branched-chain amino acids, all that. I mean, look, we've known for more than 40 years that those eating predominantly plant-based diets weigh on average about 30 pounds less than the general population, but you don't know if it's the diet itself until you put it to the test. In 2017, a group of New Zealand researchers published a broad study, a 12-week randomized controlled trial in the poorest region of the country with the highest rates of obesity. Overweight individuals were randomized to receive either standard medical care or semi-weekly classes offering advice and encouragement to eat a low-fat diet centered around fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. And that's all it was, just empowerment with knowledge. No meals were provided. The intervention group was merely informed about the benefits of plant-based eating and encouraged to fit it into their own lives. no significant change in the control group, but the plant-based group, even without any restrictions on portions, be able to freely eat all the healthy plant foods they wanted, lost an average of 19 pounds by the end of the 3-month study. Right? Now, 19 pounds is a respectable weight loss, right? Yeah, but what happened next? At the end of those 12 weeks, class was dismissed and no more instruction was given, right? But the researchers were curious to see how much weight the subjects had gained back after being released from the study. And so everyone was invited back at the 6-month mark to get reweighed. I mean, the plant-based group had left the 3 months study 19 pounds lighter, but after 6 months, they were only down about 27 pounds. They got even better, right? The plant-based group had been feeling so good, both physically and mentally, and had been able to come off so many of their medications that they were sticking with it on their own, and the pounds continued to come off. What about a year later? I mean, even in studies that last a whole year, where people are coached to stay on a particular diet the entire time, any pounds lost in the first few months tends to kind of creep on back. But the broad study only lasted 3 months. Yet after it was all over, not only were those who were randomized to the plant-based group, not only did they lose dozens of pounds, but they kept it off. They not only achieved greater weight loss at 6 and 12 months than any other comparable study. That was months after the study had already ended. Right? A whole food plant-based diet achieved the greater weight loss ever recorded compared to any other such intervention published in the medical literature. You can read the record-breaking study in full for free at nature.com. Here we go. nature.com/articles/NUTD2173. Or you can just point your phone camera at the screen and pick off the QR code. Any diet that results in reduced calorie intake can result in weight loss. I mean, dropping pounds isn't so much the issue. The problem is keeping them off. And a key difference between plant-based nutrition and more traditional approaches to weight loss is that people are encouraged to eat ad libitum, meaning, it gets even bigger. People are encouraged to eat ad libitum, which means eat as much as you want, no calorie counting, no portion control, just eating. Right? The strategy is to improve the quality of food rather than restricting the quantity of food. If you put people on a diet packed with fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and beans, and allow them to eat as much as they want, they end up eating about 50% fewer calories than they would have otherwise. Just as full on half the calories. Wait a second. How can you keep people satisfied slashing more than 1,000 calories out of their daily diet? Well, you do it by eating more high-bulk, low-calorie density foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and beans, and fewer calorie-dense foods like meats, cheeses, sugars, and fats. But it may not just be all on the calories in side of the equation. Those eating more plant-based appear to effectively be burning more calories in their sleep. The resting metabolic rate of those eating more plant-based may be 10% higher or more, a boost of metabolism that can translate into burning off hundreds of extra calories a day without doing a thing. Right? Eating more plant-based, you burn more calories just existing, just being alive. Right? So no wonder why those eating more plant-based tend to be slimmer. Start packing your diet with real foods that grow out of the ground, and the pounds should come off naturally, taking you down towards your ideal weight. But what about ketogenic diets? Body fat loss actually slows down when you switch to a ketogenic diet because your body starts cannibalizing its own protein. Just looking at the bathroom scale, though, the keto diet seems like a smashing success, losing less than a pound a week on the regular diet to, boom, 3.5 pounds within 7 days after switching to keto. But what was happening inside their bodies tells a totally different story. On the ketogenic diet, their rate of body fat loss was slowed by more than half. Right? So most of what they were losing was water, but they were also losing protein, also losing lean mass. That may help explain why the leg muscles of CrossFit trainees may shrink as much as 8% within 2 months. Exercise is supposed to make your muscles bigger, not smaller. Of course, look, even if keto diets worked, the goal of weight loss is not to fit into a skinnier casket. Right? People whose diets even tend to trend that way appear to live significantly shorter lives. On the other hand, even just drifting in the direction of eating more healthy plant foods have been associated with living longer. Now, those going the other way, though, those who start out more plant-based, but then add meat to their diet, back to the diet at least once a week or more, not only double or triple their odds of diabetes, stroke, heart disease, and weight gain, they also appear to suffer an associated 3.6-year drop in life expectancy. That's going from no meat to just once a week meat or more. Low-carb diets have been shown to impair artery function and worsen heart disease, whereas whole food plant-based diets have been shown to actually reverse heart disease. That's what Ornish used, right? So it appears to be the most effective diet for weight loss, just so happens to be the only diet ever proven to reverse heart disease in the majority of patients, right? If my grandma didn't have to die like that, maybe no one's grandma has to die like that. If that's all a plant-based diet could do, reverse the number one killer of men and women, shouldn't that kind of be the default diet until proven otherwise? And the fact that it can also be so effective in preventing, arresting, reversing other leading killers, like type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure, would seem to make the case for plant-based eating simply overwhelming. There's no other diet that can do that, right? Only one diet, a diet centered around whole plant foods, right? We don't have to mortgage our health to lose weight. The single healthiest diet also appears to be the most effective diet for weight loss. Right? After all, permanent weight loss requires permanent dietary change. I mean, healthier habits just have to become a way of life, and if they're going to be lifelong, you want them to lead to a long life. Thankfully, the single best diet proven for weight loss may also just so happen to be the safest, cheapest way to eat for the longest, healthiest life. Thank you.
Okay, we put him to the test. Did he deliver? Awesome. So I want to say, I know some of you may want to ask some questions, and we're going to take a few. We don't have many because we've got to get him back to the hotel. But he has his website, nutritionfacts.org. Any question you could possibly want to get answered, there are videos and blogs, and it's just unbelievable amount of information. So don't be dissuaded if you don't get a chance to ask your question. But if you have a burning question related to this topic, we have a mic that's set up at the end of this stand here, this ramp. So please get in line to ramp it up to ask some questions, and he will be happy to take them.
If you didn't get the iPad that was circulating around, if you have a smartphone with you, you can point your camera at that little QR code. You should be able to subscribe. But if you sign up on the little iPad, you don't need to do that. You will be subscribed and not miss a thing.
Wait, can we get that iPad back in front?
Oh, and if anyone, iPad anywhere, somewhere, got it somewhere in the back.
Is that it back there?
Oh, there we go. It's over in the back, so we'll grab it. Thank you so much. Okay, question.
Hello? Okay, this is really short. Okay. Dr. Greger, thank you very much. Can you please comment about the importance of diluting vinegar if you plan on drinking it?
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. So it's critically important that you never drink vinegar straight. You burn your esophagus, and that's very bad. So So you can put it in a glass of water, put in some tea with lemon juice, you sprinkle it on your salad, do whatever, but you just don't drink it straight. Thank you for that question.
Thank you. My question is about one of the discussions that I often have is increasing all those fruits and vegetables that are full of pesticides and chemicals and blah, blah, blah. Do you have any advice on a good answer or something that you can research for that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Here I am telling people to eat lots of fruits and vegetables. What about all the pesticides? Or do we have to choose organic? Well, in How Not to Die, I talk about this modeling study which suggests that if half of Americans ate a single serving more of fruits or vegetables a day, we would prevent every year 20,000 cases of cancer. That's how powerful fruits and vegetables are. But because we're talking about conventional fruits and vegetables, pesticide-laden fruits and vegetables, that added pesticide burden would cause 10 cancer cases every year. So we would just end up preventing 19,990 cancer cases a year. So that gives you a sense of the tremendous benefit from produce versus the tiny bump in risk. Now you say, wait a second, why accept any risk at all? Choose organic. Great. But we should never let concern over pesticides prevent us from stuffing our face with as many fruits and vegetables as possible.
Thank you, Dr. Greger, for an excellent lecture as usual. You know, one question I have is on YouTube, there is a lecture that you've given where you quote studies that show that vegans sometimes do not live as long as meat eaters. And you bring up about homocysteine and about the omega-3s and omega-6s, and even discouraging to a certain point that the brain degenerative diseases were higher in the vegans. Could you expand on that? Because it is a little discouraging, and knowing that you may have to do some special things to get the true benefit of a vegan lifestyle. Thank you.
You can tell that's an old video because I had hair. That's that you really know is an old video. Yeah, no, but darn it, I called it because so for example, people give me I review documentaries and books to make sure things the science. I volunteer my time to make sure we have good science in the movement, because all it takes is one, someone making some exaggerated claim, people throw the baby out of the bathwater and just dismiss the whole thing. So it's very important to me. And, one of the most common things I catch is people say, oh, eating plant-based reduces your risk of heart disease and stroke and cancer and diabetes and blah, blah, blah. And I say, blah, 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 blah. You can't say stroke. Why can't you say stroke? Well, we would assume that your stroke rates are lower because of lower cholesterol and blood pressure and blah, blah, blah. But we just don't have any studies on stroke rates in vegetarians and vegans versus meat eaters. And that was over a decade ago, raised concerns that we'd actually see that we would have higher stroke rates in vegetarians. And Epic Oxford just came out and for the first time ever looked at vegetarians and vegans stroke rates, and that's exactly what they found. And so February 16th, I believe, I hope I didn't get the date wrong, definitely not, what month is it? Is it this month? Oh my God, this month, 10 days. Am I going to be home in 10 days? Oh, okay, well, it's this month sometime. Maybe I'm doing it from the road. I don't know. But I'm giving a webinar called Why Do Vegetarians Have Higher Stroke Rate? And it's a 2-hour, 3-hour webinar, something like that. I go through all the signs. But basically, the spoiler alert, sorry if you, it's homocysteine. So, and it's a homocysteine caused by inadequate B12 consumption. So if you don't get enough vitamin B12, your homocysteine levels skyrockets and causes havoc within your arteries. And the study was done in Great Britain, where they don't allow B12 supplementation of organic food, so none of the soy milks, none of the meats, like plant-based meats, have any B12 added to them, and they're not supplementing. And so they have terrible rates of B12 deficiency, and their homocysteine levels are through the roof, and so all they have to do is take their B12. There's 2 vitamins that are not made by plants. One is vitamin D, which is made by animals such as yourself when you walk outside. It's the sunshine vitamin. Not everyone is privileged enough to live in sunny Southern California, though. And so people living at higher latitudes, particularly during the winter months. So, for example, in Boston, where I went to school, no matter how long you sunbathe naked on the Boston Commons in January and February, you are not making any vitamin D. In fact, that's where the studies were done. On the top of one of the tallest buildings in Boston, they put human foreskins, and they got 0 vitamin D synthesis. That's where you get human skin. Anyway, okay, digression. But so during the winter months at high latitudes, 2,000 international units of vitamin D a day supplementation, or frequent Caribbean vacations, or come down to LA, whatever. Okay. The only other vitamin not made by plants, not made by animals either, it's vitamin B12, my little microbes that blanket the earth. So we used to get B12 drinking out of a mountain stream or well water, but now we chlorinate the water supply to kill off any bacteria. So we don't get a lot of B12 in our water anymore. Don't get a lot of cholera either. This is a good thing that we live in a nice sanitary world, but we do have to get B12 from somewhere. Our fellow great apes get all the B12 they need from bugs, dirt, and feces. I prefer supplements. And so 2,000 micrograms of what's called cyanocobalamin, which is a type of B12, once a week. Get all the B12 you need, costs less than $5 a year. Or if you want to take it every day, it's 50 micrograms a day, every day. Or if you're over age 65, you need to take 1,000 a day. So critically important for not only brain health, but all sorts of other things, anemia, et cetera, critically important. And I called it over a decade ago, and only finally do we have the science to actually back it up. Unfortunately, I wish I was wrong.
Most grains have gotten a bad rap. What do you recommend in grains that haven't been cross-contaminated?
So critically important for grains is structure. So for example, the reason, for example, in How Not to Die, I have this kind of traffic light scoring system for where the foods are red light, green light, yellow light. And the reason that 100% whole wheat bread was in the yellow light category, not the green light category, is typically bread, they add sodium to it. And so I encourage people not to have added salt if whenever possible. But also, so what I describe as a processed food, what I mean by my definition is nothing bad added, nothing good taken away. So bread violates the nothing bad added because they add salt to it. But it also violates nothing good taken away. You say, wait a second, it's 100% whole wheat. Yeah, but what's been taken away is the structure. And that's what I really learned researching this book. It's you're breaking down the cell's walls. When you grind even whole grains into flour, each flour granule is actually smaller than a cell wall. It's powdered so fine. Now, stone ground is a little better because you'll still get some intact cell walls, but otherwise, all those calories are free for the taking. Our bodies were never meant to drink something like fruit juice or powdered grains, and our blood sugar spikes too much. We overcompensate with insulin. We get a burst of fat in our blood called triglycerides. And so ideally we should eat intact grains, whole intact grains. You see the actual intact grain right there. So you've heard of steel cut oats. Even better is oat groats, which is what they are before they're cut in 2 or 3 pieces to make steel cut oats. Oat groats, and they're delicious and chewy and wonderful. But we should also do, rye berries and, barley groats. And anyway, groats should be your new favorite term. And so I have ideally intact grains. That's the way we feed our good gut bugs. No matter how well you chew, you're going to have all that wonderful starch and good things to feed your gut flora. Sorghum is a great grain. Anyone has never tried sorghum? That's new to me. I didn't know before the book. And now it's like a good rice substitute, healthier than rice. Finger millets, also a good one. All sorts of good stuff. I've got a new cookbook coming out in December, the How Not to Diet cookbook, and so I'll have lots of good recipes on that. Yes?
My question, great information and great presentation, Dr. Greger. My information my question is around inflammation. As we're losing weight, we are presumably burning fat, which may contain a lot of toxins. And my question is a two-parter. One is, do you recommend that we pay particular attention to our antioxidant intake, especially if we're keeping our calories low and burning fat? And secondly, I found if you eat pretty much just fruits and vegetables, the ratio of omega-3 to omega-6, which, as you know, if you get too much omega-6, can be inflammatory. It seems to be very well matched, 1-to-1, pretty much if you eat a wide variety. But then if you eat somewhere like overt fats, avocado, nuts, or seeds, then you have to have kind of a strategy to make sure you have to have the right ratio. Is that what you found or what you recommend?
So that first point is really fascinating. That's another thing I learned. I learned just as much as everybody else, doing my videos, writing the books. Like, I wasn't taught anything about this in medical school. And so there's a famous study called Biosphere 2, where it's, I think it's in Arizona, right? You can go visit. Where so basically they lock people, they wanted to see if it was like, if you're on Mars or something, can you have a completely self-encapsulated thing, no air in and out, like, can you grow your own food, blah, blah, blah. So they stuck these people, these researchers into the thing, and all of a sudden the crops failed. And so it turned into a study of caloric restriction. All right, scientists are scientists. They all lost a lot of weight. And so they very carefully measured all sorts of things over this 2-year period. And one of the things was the levels of dioxins and PCBs in their blood shot through the roof because they lost so much fat. And so their whole lives, they had fat build up, they had these toxins, these persistent organic pollutants build up in their fat stores, and then all of a sudden they burn that fat and those toxins were released into their system. That's why, so where do we get that? We get it from animal fat. Well, just like it builds up in cows, chickens, and fish, it builds up in our own bodies. And so if you're a cannibal, you can get a whole bunch. And if you lose your body fat. And so there's actually recommendations that one of the reasons why we say breastfeeding women should not lose weight, you should wait till after breastfeeding to lose weight, is because we don't want those toxins flowing into our infants. So what can we do when we're losing weight? Losing weight is a good thing, but fiber, that's where fiber consumption pulls in. The fiber in your stomach can actually trap these toxins, and because many of them are released into the bile and then get reabsorbed in your small intestine. But if there's fiber in there to trap it like there should be, then we can kind of pull it out of the system. So another reason, critically important to eat a high fiber diet during weight loss, and also cut down the risk of gallbladder attacks if you're losing weight a little too quickly. And the second part of the question, what was the second part of the question? Another good question.
It was the omega-3
to omega-6 ratio. So we only need to worry about our omega-3 and omega-6 ratio if we're not getting a preformed long-chain omega-3 fatty acids. It's a little complicated but anyway, walnuts, flax seeds, chia seeds, hemp seeds have the short-chain omega-3 fatty acid called alpha-linolenic acid, which our bodies can elongate into the so-called fish fats like EPA, DHA. The question is, can it do it enough for optimum health? And the enzyme system that elongates your omega-3s is the same enzyme system that elongates omega-6 found in crappy processed food oils like cottonseed oil, corn oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, which they use just because they're super cheap. And so if you have a lot of those in your system, those enzymes, you eat a walnut, and the enzyme's like, we're so full of cottonseed oil that there's no way we're going to get around to your walnut, and you don't make the long-chain omega-3s. So that's where this concept of omega-6 to omega-3 ratios, and basically it just ended up saying don't eat a lot of junk food and you're going to be fine. It's just when you get all of these junky oils, then you just totally overwhelm your system. But if you're taking a long-chain omega-3, pollutant-free omega-3 like algae-based, so you don't get the things like mercury and stuff found in fish oil. So you take like 250 milligrams of algae-based or yeast-based DHA every day. You don't have to worry about your omega-3 to omega-6 ratio because you're taking it preformed the long chain. So you don't have to worry about making it yourself. Even though flax seeds are super healthy for other reasons, still part of the daily dozen, even if they had no omega-3s in it, because the cancer-fighting lignans.
The American Institute of Cancer Research, I know you've praised them in the past. For some reason, they're not all the way in on the plant-based diet. They still prefer the Mediterranean diet. They're advocating chicken and fish. They say that there's no conclusive evidence about the plant-based diet, so just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So they had a reversal. So the American Institute for Cancer Research, World Cancer Research Fund, it's kind of the preeminent diet and cancer scientific body. And they put out these comprehensive reports. And you know, you'll see one of my videos where I do a screenshot of them praising Colin Campbell and the China study, saying we all got to eat plant-based, and then all of a sudden mysteriously disappeared from the website and said, oh, never mind about the whole plant-based diet thing. Eat more Mediterranean, so decrease meat intake, but yeah, kind of a more Mediterranean approach, lots of vegetables, but let's not go crazy here. And so yeah, so I'm not sure what happened internally, what kind of pushback happened, such that they kind of weakened their stance. But just like plant-based diet is the only diet ever proven to reverse heart disease, you know, after Ornish conquered killer number 1, heart disease, he moved on to killer number 2, cancer. Put a group of men with early-stage prostate cancer on the same plant-based diet that reversed heart disease, and for the first time ever, and only now, the only diet ever proven to reverse the progression of cancer. On average, the tumors shrunk in the plant-based group while continued to grow, as cancer tends to do in the control group, which you're told to eat whatever your doctor tells you. First time this has ever been shown. In fact, to date, there's no diet that's been shown to do that other than a plant-based diet. And now, interestingly, he's moved on to killer number 4, Alzheimer's disease. He's now doing a randomized controlled trial of Alzheimer's patients randomized to a plant-based diet, sees if he can reverse Alzheimer's. He has some chutzpah. But in terms of what happened internally, I'm not sure.
Thank you, Dr. Grieger. I've been on a pretty much a good whole food plant-based diet for 30 years or so.
Wonderful.
Wow. And to the best of my ability, which is pretty good. And I've, you know, in the last 5 years or so, I've developed these tremors.
Okay.
And I'm wondering if there's anything that I can do or that you would suggest, or.
So the most important thing is you see a neurologist and you see what kind. So there's something called essential tremors.
They just call those tremors, and you know, a lot of people have them, and
Yeah.
sorry.
So I mean, there are certain so there's Parkinsonian tremors, the Parkinson's disease, something called essential tremors. So I only have one video on essential tremors, and that was talking about chicken consumption. As a risk factor, but we have no data in terms of reversal or treating, but we do have data on preventing and treating Parkinson's disease. But thankfully, it doesn't sound like you have that.
I haven't touched a chicken in years.
With diet, yes, and so, but we have no data on treating on any lifestyle treatments for essential tremor.
Dr. Greger, thank you for your presentation. Quick question in 2 different realms about vegan protein. One, in the field of all the new products that are coming out, the Beyond Beef, the protein isolates, soy protein, pea protein isolates, what you think about that? And then 2, is there any danger athletically for athletes and so forth getting high amounts of vegan clean protein, whether it's vegan protein powders or these other protein forms that, you know, where you're getting, say, a gram per body pound or so forth, and building muscle and so forth.
All right. So I have when's that going to be up? So I'm now doing webinars, these live webinars, practically every month, and I have a whole webinar coming out on everything you ever wanted to know about these new kind of plant-based meats on the market now. And one of the questions I do is, well, what about these plant protein isolates like pea protein and soy protein? And to my surprise, for example, the cholesterol data shows that you give that soy protein isolate works just as well as soybeans in bringing down cholesterol. So it's not the fiber, it's not the phytosterols, all these other things. It may actually be the plant protein itself that's actually lowering people's cholesterol when people eat soybeans. And so it works just as good, which is kind of surprising to me. I mean, obviously you're missing out in terms of nutrition-wise, but in terms of the kind of health benefits they may be concerned about. Of course, there's too much sodium and saturated fat from coconut oil and other things in there. Yeah, so I actually could only find benefits in terms of these protein isolates on the market. However, having said that, I think what we're going to find in my next book, which is How Not to Age, which I start January 2021, be out December 22, is one of the keys to longevity may indeed be protein restriction. And by protein restriction, I mean just eating the recommended amount of protein as opposed to the excess protein. And so for example, the average life expectancy of professional bodybuilders, 48. That may be anabolic steroids affecting their heart. So it's hard to really tease out what exactly is going on there, but I can't imagine that those insane protein loads are helping.
Yeah, I was more or less thinking like straight vegan protein. If
Yeah.
excess amounts of that would cause any
Right.
kind of
Well,
danger.
and so you can eat all the beans you want. But yeah, with these protein powders, you can get such unphysiological levels of protein in your body. I mean, you're like, wow, if I actually did with this with kidney beans, this would just totally not work. And we just don't know. In many cases, we just don't know what the effects of those. But then we could get levels of some of the things that we're concerned about, like methionine. Lysine to bump up TOR, leucine, many of these things that unfortunately the anabolic effects on muscle mass also has a growth promoting effect on any budding tumors we have in our body, for example, right? So that's why eating like whey protein increases the rate of prostate cancer growth. But it may also be bulking up your muscles, but again, you're going to look great in that casket, but yeah.
Hello. I'm here with my 11-year-old nephew who recently went vegetarian.
Woohoo!
Chose to do it himself.
Great.
And he also recently went for a checkup with his pediatrician who told him, when his mom told the pediatrician that he decided to go vegetarian, he was told, no, you need to eat chicken and fish at least. And I was wondering if you had any advice for his mom, who's also here, to put her at ease when it comes to an 11-year-old vegetarian getting enough nutrition.
Yeah. My diagnosis is you need another doctor. That would be the. Just to put your mind at ease. I mean, obviously, you want to give your children the best possible start of life, and so the official position of the American Dietetic Association, the largest and oldest professional association of nutrition professionals in the world. This goes back for 20 years, but you can pick up their latest position paper that strictly plant-based diets are appropriate for all stages of life, including infancy and pregnancy and old age, etc., and actually have benefits, not just neutral, but actually benefits. And what might help that pediatrician is to share, for example, child and baby care. Dr. Benjamin Spock, probably the most prestigious, preeminent pediatrician in history, wrote like the second best-selling book, second only to the Bible, on child and baby care. And in the 7th edition, the last edition he wrote before he died in his 90s, he recommended that all children be raised with zero exposure to meat and dairy, because he could see the childhood obesity epidemic, what the grandparents are dying from, and finally, and so look, when Dr. Spock says it, that may help, but also the authoritative body on nutrition also says it, but that may help too, and yeah, that we need to educate that doctor.
Thank you, McGregor, for coming in. First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming in here, and being on a plant-based diet could be awfully difficult, but it's doable. So that being said, I would like to, maybe you could touch us in a nutshell how antioxidants work and how spices can play a role in those antioxidants, considering that those who are new to plant-based, they might be missing out on that flavor.
Yeah, so anyone's interested in antioxidants, lots of videos where I rank various classes of foods. And so, if it doesn't matter to you, yeah, walnuts are better than, cashews, blueberries are better than this, and you can go through and I don't care what bean I eat, might as well eat black beans because they have more antioxidants, what they actually do. So they quench these free radicals, which play a role in aging. That's why our skin wrinkles. That's why our organ systems break down as we get old. And they play a role in cognitive function decline. And so we have our own internal antioxidants, but basically we just rely on hijacking the antioxidants in plants. Why do plants have antioxidants? Because they're baking in the sun all day long. If you were in the sun all day long, you'd get sunburned. Why don't leaves get sunburned? Why? Because they are packed with antioxidants, because there's these firestorms of photosynthesis taking place with the energy from the sun, and so they're just packed with antioxidants. So our body, for example, human beings lost the ability to make vitamin C. Almost any other species, they make vitamin C. They don't have to. Vitamin C is not a vitamin for most animals, but primates lost the ability to make vitamin C. Why? Because we're eating fruit and leaves all day. We're eating vitamin C all the time. Our body just scrapped the DNA, saying, "Why am I spending all my time making vitamin C if you're eating vitamin C all day?" And so we'll just use the plants vitamin C. I mean, it works the same whether they make it or stuff, that's awesome unless you're not making vitamin C. You die of scurvy. I mean, no other animals, us and guinea pigs, we die of scurvy. Nobody else does. So our body is counting on us eating lots of plants, which on average have 68 times more antioxidants than animal foods. And so, that's really where it's concentrated. And there's actually a minimum recommended dose, and you can calculate it. And indeed, little sprinkles of spice. And so I have videos where it's like, okay, here we got this. This is how much in whole wheat spaghetti. Here's how much in tomatoes when you add the marinara sauce. And you add some broccoli, and here's your antioxidants. Oh, we're almost at the amount. And then you add like a little pinch of dried oregano. And you just doubled the whole dish, the antioxidant content of the entire dish. Just with that little bit of oregano. And many of the spices are just packed with antioxidants. So you can really easily reach your recommended daily allowance, and there's all sorts of different herbs and spices, and you can pick and choose. And yes, you can make delicious food out of them as a little bonus.
Hey Doc, how you doing? Thanks a lot. So the simple questions are: can you talk a little bit about gut flora transplants? Can you talk a little bit about what oils, if any, should ever be used? Can you talk a little bit about whether the plants consumed should be cooked, or which ones should be versus shouldn't be?
Just three?
Just three. You want more? I can give you more.
No, okay. All right.
I got lots of questions.
All right. What was the first one?
It was about gut flora.
Oh, yeah, gut flora. Oh, my God, it's so cool. Until recently, relatively recently, we had no idea what gut bugs were in our colon because they're unculturable. They didn't exist. They couldn't grow out. We couldn't grow them in a lab, so we couldn't just culture them out. And then all of a sudden we have these DNA fingerprinting techniques, and we finally, for the first time, could see the identity of these bugs in our system. And then we could see the difference between different people, the differences when you eat different foods, what happens to your bugs, and then we can correlate diseases with different bugs, and then we can change people's diet, their microbiome changes, and then their disease changes. Very cool. But what we missed all along this time was causation. We had correlation. We didn't have cause and effect. It's because you put people on a healthy diet, because that's what you want a good, healthy microbiome, you feed them fiber, you feed them prebiotics. So you feed them plant foods. So you give people a bunch of plant foods, the microbiome gets better, and the disease gets better. And you're like, duh, you fed them lots of plant foods, their disease got better. That's not, you're not going to get a Nobel Prize for that. How do we know microbiome had anything to do with it? How do you prove it? You prove it with fecal transplant. So let's take that person that you fed healthy food to, and then you transplant their stool into somebody else's intestine and have them continue to eat crappy foods and see if they still have the benefit. Aha! Then you can prove it's the microbiome. So there's all these vegan fecal transplant studies where they take meat eaters and they give them, yeah. You stick a tube down their nose, hose through the nose, and then you put it in their stomach, or you have them swallow. You don't want to burp afterwards. That's all I'm saying. But then you transplant, and so what happens? You see remarkable effects. And so, for example, you take somebody who's skinny and you give them the microbiome of someone who's obese, and all of a sudden they start packing on the pounds. They eat the same amount, packing on the pounds. That's why I have a whole chapter on a slimming microbiome. It can make a big difference. Changes in mental health, changes in immunity, changes in asthma and other inflammatory diseases. Amazing things you change. But the problem is, of course, it only lasts for a few days before they kill off all their good gut bugs. They get the good gut bugs, but then they starve to death because they continue to eat cheeseburgers and milkshakes. No fiber, right? But so you only maintain the benefits if you continue to eat healthy. But the real revolution in fecal transplants, they're not FDA approved except for one indication, pseudomembranous colitis, which can be life-saving. But so right now, don't try this at home. But the exciting thing about it now is it just proves the role of microbiome, and so that just means all this data just points to, oh my God, we really have to eat more whole plant foods. Before we thought it was good, maybe it lowered your cholesterol, blah blah. No, but now we know that's critical for our gut health, and now we prove cause and effect on the effects of our gut health on the rest of our body. Number 2 was oil. The question about oil, what's the best oil to use? No need to use any oil at all. Remember, I just showed you 1 tablespoon, 120 calories. You wouldn't even feel that in your stomach. 120 calories of low-calorie density food fill you up. So that's the way to do it. Although I just did a scripted, you were the first people to ever hear about this. I just scripted a video about, I wanted to review all the data on extra virgin olive oil. There's this a sense that extra virgin olive oil is anti-inflammatory. So, is that true or not? Easy. You just test, you give people extra virgin olive oil and see what happens to their, something like C-reactive protein, the systemic inflammation, and it turns out it doesn't help. But it helps topically, which is crazy. For osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis, you take extra virgin olive oil, like a teaspoon 3 times a day, applied for rheumatoid arthritis, fingers and knees, and for osteoarthritis, just the knees. Significant benefit compared to either dry rubbing with nothing or rubbing with a drug, an anti-inflammatory drug, or just something like paraffin wax. Remarkable benefit for arthritis from topical extra virgin olive oil use. Very cool. I can't wait for those videos to come out. Yeah. Anyway, but you're not eating it, you're putting it on your body. And I guess massage oil, that'd be fine too. Anyway. And then the third thing was vegetables. Should you eat them raw? Should you eat them cooked? You should eat your vegetables in whichever way will get you to eat the most vegetables. Thank you so much, everybody.
Okay, everyone, thank you so much for coming. If you could please fill out your feedback form, it really helps us in being able to know what you guys like and what you don't like and what you want in the future. Thank you so very much for your attention tonight. Good evening. Yes, Dr. Greger.
On behalf of the Grazia Dio family and Torrance Memorial, we want to thank you for coming, and these are a few mementos to help remember us.
So much.